Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Michelle Graff, and I'm the editor in chief at National Jeweler. I'm pleased to welcome you to the latest episode of My Next Question, National Jeweler's webinar series sponsored by RDI Diamonds. Today's session is hosted by our senior editor, Ashley Davis, and features Nicole Ward, founder of CNW Group. Before I turn the discussion over to Ashley and Nicole, I just want to let our attendees know that if they have a question during the course of the discussion, they can type it into the Zoom Q&A box at the bottom of their screens. I'll be back on at the end of the discussion to facilitate the Q&A. Also, today's session is being recorded and will be available on the National Jeweler website this coming Monday, July 26th. Now I'll turn it over to Ashley to get things started. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle, and hi, Nicole. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
So I just want to introduce you to our guest quickly. Nicole Ward is the founder of CNW Group, a New York City-based fine jewelry sales agency that works with brands like Melissa Kay, Emily P. Wheeler, and Soralina. She got her start in the fine jewelry world at Paige Novick before venturing out on her own and establishing her own company in 2017. She works with world-class retailers from luxury department stores to small independent jewelry stores, finding the best doors across the globe for her clients. I'm so excited to have you here today. How are you?
Oh my God, I'm good. That was such a nice intro. Thank you.
So I want to start just kind of at the beginning with your background and tell us how you got started in the fine jewelry world.
Oh my God, by total accident. It was not really in the plans. I mean, I was always obsessed with fine jewelry because who isn't? But all of my friends were moving to New York one summer when we were in college. And obviously I had the worst FOMO. So I was like, I have to get an internship in New York. So I went online, was like searching for any internships. And at the time I was studying communications and political science. So I literally found, I don't know, I came up to New York and took like 20 interviews in a day or in a 2-day period. And one of them was Paige Novick, who is a fine jewelry designer and had an amazing company and still does. And I went, I interviewed with her. I think she was my third of the day. She offered me an internship on the spot. And I was like, yes, okay, done. I can go back now. So anyways, long story short, I interned with Paige that summer and for every other summer that I was in school. And she offered me a job after graduation. I came back, worked for the company. I think I started as like social media coordinator or something like that. And what the best thing about being able to work at a small company is you literally learn everything. So I learned everything about the business, from product development, design, production, sourcing stones, you know, all of that good stuff. And then I learned the whole business side of it. And that's really what I loved. And I got into wholesale sales. I worked with their marketing teams and everything like that. And that's really, I found what I love to do. And that's kind of where it all began.
So you have a very non-millennial resume then.
Oh, for sure.
Did you start your own company after Paige Novick?
Yes. So I was with Paige for,
Incredible.
yes, like 6 years. Yes, I'm very loyal.
Yeah.
I didn't jump around. I think like all my friends had so many different jobs, and I was like, no, I'm here. And I really loved it. And I think the reason why I never felt the need to kind of jump around is because I was learning so much. You know, every day was so different, and I really just took every opportunity to learn literally everything I could. I said no to nothing. I wanted to know everything that I could know. And so, yeah, in 2017, I kind of took the things that I loved the most and just, you know, went out on my own. Paige was actually one of my first clients. And literally, I think, oh my God, it must have been like the day after I decided I was going to do this. I was doing a trunk show at Saks in New York, and I met Melissa Kay. And we just had, you know, a very normal discussion. And I told her what I was doing. And she was like, wait, can we do something together? And we've been together ever since.
So what was the transition like going from working in-house to having your own company and working with multiple brands?
I mean, it was for me, I don't think I ever thought about like what the transition was like. It just, I went from being in house on Tuesday to having my own company on Wednesday. And I'm a hustler, like I hustle. It's so no matter if I was in house or with my own company, it's always hustle mentality. And the way that I operate my company is that with every brand that I work with, I at least think of it this way, that I work with, it's like I'm in-house with them. I tell every brand that I work with from the beginning, I want to know everything. I want to know everything that's going on with your business. Even if it's things you think that I don't need to know, I want to know. Probably very annoying, but it's what it is.
That is one thing about you. You do seem very deeply embedded with each
Totally.
team.
Well, and I really think, listen, in order for me to do what my ultimate job is to do, which is sales, I really believe in a full, all-encompassing approach that I need to know every little thing and that it's all full circle. So I need to know what we're doing from a branding perspective because I need to know how to tell the brand story and be a part of all of this messaging because that's what I'm ultimately telling the retailer who's ultimately passing this on to the consumer. So I really do believe it is a full circle. And in order for me to do, what I'm supposed to do, I have to be a part of it.
That's so true. You have to be completely on board with every aspect of the brand to be able to sell it properly.
Totally, totally.
So who are your clients currently?
Oh my God, I'm obsessed with all of them. I mean, obviously I'm very biased, but I think I work with literally the most talented people in the world who are also just incredibly kind people. And that's really, besides being an amazing designer, you have to be a good person. That's my prerequisite of who I take on. But my clients are Melissa Kay, Devin Woodhill, Emily P. Wheeler, Soralina, State Property, and Robinson Pelham.
Okay, great. And can you talk a little bit about what your day to day is like in your job? And I'm personally curious about this just because, with selling schedules, is there like an ebb and flow in your year?
I mean, to be honest with you, no day is ever the same. Like I can say my days start out the same. I try to start every day the same, but in terms of what goes into the day, it never looks like. And I think that's why I really enjoy it. But to give you an idea, every morning I wake up like 6 a.m. I check first my phone and not just email anymore because everyone's reaching out like DMs, WhatsApp. My God, I have like so many different applications that I have to check before I even check emails. Because I do have international brands, State Property and Robinson Pelham, and then I also do a worldwide business with my retailers. So I know like every wellness or like healthcare guru would tell you that you're for sure not supposed to check your phone the first thing when you wake up, but I do
You're
that.
catching up with other time zones.
I'm catching up with time zones. I work in literally every single time zone. So I got to catch up to them and I have to see what's happening just to make sure they get everything they need before I start my day. So I deal with all the international stuff first, get out any time sensitive things. And then it really just depends on the day. I mean, I have designer catch ups where either we're going through strategies, going through selling reports, things like that, working with retailers where I also do strategy calls, working on like, okay, what can we do together that's super cool? This is what we have in the pipeline. What can we do that's super innovative? And especially during COVID, it kind of completely shifted how we were doing things. But yeah, I mean, to answer this question, it's actually such a hard question to ask because you would just have to come follow me for a day or maybe a week, like a full encompassing thing of what I do.
In a typical non-pandemic year, how much were you traveling?
A lot. And again, because I do a business worldwide, not just with designers, but with our retail partners, I was traveling probably 65% of the year.
Oh my gosh, that's even more than I anticipated you saying.
It was a lot. And I mean, when you're kind of in it, you don't really realize it. You're just go, 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 go. And I think what we found is travel for sure still needs to be a part of the equation post, pandemic. But I think, I mean, my goal is to really kind of scale that back to, 40%.
Mm-hmm. So would the bulk of that be trunk shows, would you say?
I mean, you're traveling, overseas, obviously, to do markets and things like that.
Yeah.
If we're doing, like, let's say if we were doing a launch with Net-a-Porter or with Harrods or something of that nature, we may go do trainings and, looping them in with events. In the Middle East, we go do the shows there. And of course, in the US domestically, you have, Vegas for couture, and then you have, New York is home base. So that's really, when we have market here, and in the US, going and doing trunk shows with our stores. Yeah.
Okay. So to take it to 2020, with shutdowns initially, what was the mood like with stores at the very outset? I'm curious, were there any major hurdles with shutdowns and stores, I guess, rescinding orders, or was there any sort of panic like that?
So I think in the very beginning, we were all just kind of like, what's going on, right? I mean, no one had a pulse on anything. And it was more so like, we were checking in with each other on a very human level. Like, hey, how are you? Is everything okay? Like, how are things by you? It was literally no business talk. And it just really brought out like the human aspect of the business.
Even with stores, like even with
with my stores, we're calling, texting, how are you? How's your family? Because it just shows like, we are a small community and we all really care about each other. And first and foremost, before business, we're all human, right? And it really is about the community. So that's really what we were doing in the beginning. It was no business talk. It was, how are you? And, we all genuinely care how the other person is doing. And then, things started, it would be more like, how are you? Wait, I have an order for this, because business started really just out of nowhere picking up. Everyone was stuck at home in their sweatpants and couldn't travel and had, cash to spend. And so jewelry was on fire. But in terms of orders being rescinded and things like that, we were really fortunate. So no, we didn't have any orders rescinded. There may have been some cases where we were working with our stores on, a really human basis. Like if they had a order that was supposed to ship in June and, they were still closed. It's like, okay, when do you think you're going to open? We can extend it out. And it was working with everyone on a one-on-one basis, because at the end of the day, we want them to be in business. They want us to be in business. How can we meet in the middle and make this work for everyone?
Okay. So the uptick in jewelry shopping in 2020, did you see that right away during the shutdown?
I mean, 2020 feels like such a blur. We work so hard. It's crazy. I want to say we started really seeing the uptick in May, like April, May, we started to kind of see it. And then over summer, it was just kind of like boom. But jewelry had a really good year.
Yeah. And I'm curious, from your perspective, what are the elements that allowed certain brands to be successful? Because there's always a certain amount of preparation and building over the years to be able to benefit from moments where people are shopping a lot. So I'm curious, what were like the most important elements for a brand?
I mean, listen, there were so many moving parts here, right? Because it was not just about the brands, it was about, your supply chain. It was really about everything. But brands that could really adapt and that were resilient and honestly, quite frankly, who would hustle, those were the ones that did the best. We figured out very quickly that this was going to be, totally digital. So, making sure that we could get photos, videos, even if it's like Instagram style shots that we could send out to retailers. And also, if you just had the product, that this was really one of the times when what you had in inventory or how fast you could make things really came into play because, you know, stores would reach out and be like, Nicole, I have a client who wants, you know, a very cool gold chain. It could be classic, whatever. The budget is 50,000. What can you get me? And literally, I would just have to pull from whoever had inventory,
Yeah.
and people were buying, and that really was the name of the game. If you could have great digital assets, be able to produce, or if you have inventory, that was the name of the game.
Okay. And which was difficult for some people with the
Totally.
jewelry district being so shut down for a while.
Totally. It was a challenge, but again, if you had good inventory that was kind of something as a base, that
Yeah.
really was super helpful.
Okay. So to pivot a little bit to trends, could you
Yeah.
talk about what retailers are loving right now?
Yeah, I mean, enamel is still having such a major moment. I think the end consumer really understands it now, whereas maybe 2 years ago they may have been a little hesitant. So enamel is still going strong. One of a kinds, those are doing really well.
Mhm.
Things that are really interesting at all price points. You know, I think the consumer really just wants something that's different that you can't find anywhere else. Also to that point, anything really like dreamy and over the top.
Mm.
You know, Emily Wheeler just did a collection called Dress Up that was all about, you know, coming out post-pandemic and getting dressed again. And everyone really responded to that because it was so exciting. And, you know,
Yeah.
everyone is so excited to get dressed again. Hearts in general are doing really well, just as a theme. I always have a lot of demand for hearts. And like I was saying before, classic gold chains and classic diamond pieces that kind of have a little edge or something different.
Mhm.
That's,
Melissa Kay is great for that.
yeah, I mean, she does the sickest chains. Her Ada collection is like, it's amazing. And we also have Zia. And anyways, we have a lot of collections. We have a lot of gold chains with Melissa Kay. She does some really good ones. And then personalization, that's been a huge thing. You know, Devin Woodhill does these great lockets that you can personalize with your monograms and also with the photos inside. Sorlina signets. So yeah, that's where I've seen a lot of, I'm sure there's more trends that I'm forgetting, but those are some of the main ones.
Yeah. Um, Something interesting about your clients is that I feel like for each of them, color is just a really big part of what they're doing right now, and all in different ways, but bold color feels like a big trend among them. So I'm curious, could you just talk about which colors stores are kind of focusing on right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little kind of all over the map. Blues and greens generally always do incredibly well. So that could be anything from turquoise and emeralds, savorites. You could even kind of argue opals into that category.
Mhm.
Those are kind of mainstays. Pink is having a huge moment. So sapphires, tourmalines, spinels, we're doing we're doing really well with. What am I forgetting? Oh, neon, duh. Neon is the new neutral, as we like to say. And also pastels. And kind of actually what's really interesting is how to mix the neons and the pastels together. That's been something really, really fun and really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, with Melissa Kay and her first neon collection,
Yeah.
how did buyers receive that? I'm wondering, because I feel like especially that first drop was just so different really from everything else on the market at that moment.
Listen, she's a genius. I mean, you know her, you know this. I remember when she showed me the collection pre-couture, it was like 2 days before. And I kind of just was like, it's either going to be amazing or I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. And she was like, listen, I know it's either going to be great or it's not. And that's okay. Like, we're just going to go after it. We're going to see what happens and, you know, hope for the best. And if it doesn't catch, then okay, we know. So we went, and you know what? We had some buyers that were really hesitant, but overall, everyone was kind of like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. even the stores that were like, listen, we are a little hesitant to place a buy right now, it's still the coolest thing we've ever seen. And it's funny because over time, all of those stores have really transitioned and bought into the collection and have killed it with the neon. So hats off to Melissa, because that was
A
so
gamble.
it was a
Got
gamble.
paid off.
Melissa's a risk taker. She's not afraid, to see what happens. And I really respect her for that.
For a new brand that's up and coming and establishing themselves and who's doing sales on their own, are there any guidelines that you have for how large a collection should be, or how many collections should be under their belt, or how many times a year should they be able to produce a new collection before they're really targeting retailers?
Yeah, so this is, because everything has really been shifting over the past couple years, and especially with COVID. But I would say before you approach a retailer, you should have at least 20 to 40 pieces in your collection. You should be able to fill a case line, right? So that a consumer or buyer can really see what it is that you're trying to relate to the world. Like, who are you as a brand? They should be able to look at a case or look at your line sheets and really see and understand that. And I really think no matter the scale of the pieces that you're doing, you really need between 20 and 40 pieces. And especially having a price range. You need your entry level price points all the way up to your wow price points, and kind of figure out what your core price point is going to be. Like, are you a 2,000 to 7,000? Is that your core? Is that your base? Figure that out and design around it, and have enough of a collection. And in terms of how many times you should be showing a year, listen, so it can kind of go two different ways, right? You can have two main collections a year and then have a little capsule for holiday, or you can have your main collection that you show at couture and then two little capsules to kind of help balance it out. But one thing that I think is really important to remember is the consumer is always looking for new, right? So the buyer always has to kind of be looking for new, and they have to know that they have enough, that they can have a few drops a year, whether they place two big seasonal orders or whether they're doing every 2 months a drop of 5, 6 to 10 pieces, that they have enough where they feel like they can really invest in your brand and it can keep going.
Okay.
So it's finding that magic formula, which is not always easy, but it kind of happens.
But that's a good place to start, a good overall picture.
This is a really good place to start, yeah.
For entry level price point that you mentioned, for someone who's making, a line of jewelry to wear every day, beautiful, fine jewelry, what do you think is a good entry level price point?
I mean, it really depends. And that's, again, it's kind of a loaded question, and I'm a little apprehensive to say what that should be, because if you are making a collection where, like, listen, your core is like $2,000, then maybe $395 or something is your entry, or $295.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, if the core of what you're selling is, or, it depends, because it's kind of like a sliding ratio.
It's relative.
Right? If your pieces are going up to $70,000, $80,000, $295, $395 is probably not your opening price point. Your opening price point may be more like $1,500, and you may have one or two pieces that are in that price bracket. But I would say most of my brands, I have one brand that has an opening price point of $495 for a pair of studs, and then after that, I think most of the opening price points are, $850, $950, something like that.
Okay, but it's nice to have it sounds like a little bit of a jump, so that you can, maybe someone who at the moment can't afford everything can still kind of have that taste.
For sure. And you have to remember sometimes too, like, I've found this from doing trunk shows and things like that, and actually meeting with the end consumer, is sometimes the women that come in and buy those $70,000 pieces, they started with the $850 and $950 just to see, what the brand is about, who they are, how the quality is.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you always have your aspirational customer, the client who maybe isn't going to buy the $10,000 earrings, but that could be your bread and butter. But they will buy the $850 or $950 piece, even up to usually like the $2,000 mark, because they want an experience of the brand.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay,
yes, I
very
think it's good
interesting.
to have that range.
Do you have other tips for brands who want to land in a prestigious retail account? I mean, and this is obviously very broad, but just maybe mistakes you've seen brands make, or just some general best practices?
For sure. I think, and listen, I'm a firm believer in like having all your ducks in a row, right? Like, no, first, I think it's really important to research the store and to understand why you want to be in that store, not just because they sell, every other fine jewelry brand on the planet that you want to align yourself with. Like, what value add can you have for the store? Why do they need your collection? And you kind of have to look at it. This is at least how I look at it from, the store's perspective. Like, why do they need one of my brands? Why do they need it? What value add can I have? And then that's kind of looking at it from the backwards approach of that kind of helps you. How do you pitch it? I would say obviously make sure that you have done a competitor analysis to understand what your unique selling point is and what you really bring to the market. That also helps you kind of find, when you look at other like brands, like, is your price point right? Do you have sellable product and does it make sense? Or are you pricing yourself completely out of the market in a way? So the whole point at the end of the day is, of course, to create beautiful jewelry and to sell it. And to sell it, the prices have to make sense. So I think that's always an important thing to do in the beginning, is to look at it and make sure the pricing is right before you take it to a retailer. Also make sure that you can produce it. That's always a huge thing. If you're going to take it and if you're going to put it on a platform, make sure that you can produce it at the end of the day, and make sure your quality is good. There's nothing worse than like having really great samples, but then the quality is not great. And then you have RTVs and you've kind of not really made a great first impression. So those are the things that I think are really important. And just in the beginning, have great product shots, especially as we're still kind of in this world that is pretty digital at the moment. Great product shots, great model shots, even having video now is really important. And also having like good, like styled shots, like how to wear different pieces from the collection together that makes sense of like how someone is going to wear that every day. Because the goal is always, you don't want them to buy one piece. You want, the customer to buy 6 pieces, and you want them to layer them together. And you really have to show them, and even the buyer, how to do that.
Yeah, so true. So it just based off of that, it sounds like it's maybe a little bit better to not be too eager to jump into trying to communicate with a certain retail account before you've found your footing and before you're ready.
Listen, I think you can always shoot your shot, right? You can always send it out, but always remember like what you're putting out there. If you're not totally ready yet, it's still out there.
Will that first impression stick?
You're making first impressions. And also remember, these buyers get tons of cold emails a day, tons. And especially around market or trade show windows, I mean, they get hundreds a day, especially these super sought after buyers. Yeah, I would be terrified to see their inboxes. And that's, in addition to all everything else they have to do.
Yeah.
So you want what you're doing to stand out, right? And I think it is good to just have things in a row before you start sending it out, and making sure that a buyer wants to see that you have longevity, right? Because they're investing not only in your product, but if they bring you in, they're putting marketing dollars into you. They're putting their trust in the fact that like they're educating their customers about you and your brand. They need to make sure you're not a one-hit wonder, and that you can produce not only a full collection from the beginning, but that you can keep going and keep producing collections, because they're investing their time, money, energy, their expertise into your brand, and they need to make sure that you're going to be here next season and that you're going to have
Yeah.
new for them to buy and that this is going to continue.
Yeah. So on a digital note,
Yeah.
I'm curious how you see this big transition to digital in terms of appointments and just the importance of having the great digital assets, even post-pandemic or mid-pandemic, wherever we are. Do you think that there will be a shift in how you operate, how your brands operate, and if you won't be traveling as much and there will be less in-person meeting?
Listen, I think we've found we can do a lot digitally that we didn't think that we could do before. So I think brands that have really, really amazing digital assets. So it's the product shots, the model shots, the, the video, that's super important. That really has helped. I mean, hats off to all the retailers and the buyers who have been able to buy this way.
Yeah.
It is not easy, and they are really, really talented and amazing people to be able to, buy from a Zoom call. But listen, there's for sure going to be a need, and there's always going to be a need for trade shows and markets and in-person appointments. That I think will never go away. I think obviously we'll see, this year as things are easing back in, what that looks like. But I think we found a way where there's going to be a nice kind of balance of maybe we don't have to travel for everything we were traveling for before, and we can scale it back a bit. But there will always be a need for in-person.
Okay. I would imagine also, especially the first time seeing a collection, maybe if you're just not experienced with it or a different
And
designer.
the way that we've done that this year, right? Because we did start working with, for every brand, we started working with new stores that
A brand new retailer.
yeah, that
Wow.
have never discovered the product before. And so what we did is obviously, one of these lovely Zoom calls. But all of my brands, we really made sure that all those digital assets that I talked about, we made like hybrid line sheet lookbooks where like you have all of this intact, like you have all of these assets in one document. And then if someone was really serious about the collection, we would send, samples or a pick box out to them so they could see the pieces in person. So we would send it for, a 3 to 4 day window. They would send it back to us, and then you have an order.
Yeah, which is really a testament to
Totally.
how things have evolved.
Yeah. And
out of necessity.
Out of necessity. And like, listen, it works. And I think that we'll continue to do a lot of that in many cases. But there will for sure still be, the in-person markets and trade shows and things of that nature. We're too much of a community who we really love seeing each other,
Yes,
touching, feeling, and trying on the jewelry.
I mean, that's the best part of the job, obviously.
That's part of the job, and we're like deprived from it. It will for sure be back, and better than ever.
So at this particular moment where we're just in this very odd in between, cases are going up here or tons of people are vaccinated there, and just this very kind of uncertain era, what is this end of summer / fall looking like for you? Because in a typical year, you would have gone to Vegas in June, and then you would do New York for New York Fashion Week and Paris for Paris Fashion Week, correct?
Yeah.
So what is in the agenda regarding Vegas and New York and Paris?
So we'll do New York appointments as usual. Paris, I have no idea. I mean, that one will probably be very last minute if we do that. And that's just really based on what's going on in the world. And I don't even know what the restrictions are today.
Right.
And then we have events booked for fall. Again, it will be super pending on whatever the world looks like. And, everyone's health is obviously, first and foremost, the most important. But for the events that we have planned, if we can get there and if we can do them, I mean, we're so excited.
Yeah. And then Vegas, are your brands going to be there?
So my brands are not doing Vegas this year. Everyone kind of made a decision in the beginning. Their own decision. Each brand was allowed to kind of decide what worked for them. And yeah, everyone just had their different things that were going on in the unknown and different things that they had to use their budgets for. So we will not be in Vegas, but we are so excited to be back at Couture in 2022. I will
Yes,
not touch them though. I'm not going to be able to look at anything on Instagram.
no, completely. I feel very fortunate that I will be there this year, and I'm so excited to go
I'm
back
so
to it. But of
jealous.
course, it's just going to be a different year for everyone. It's going to be an unusual Vegas.
Exactly. I'm gonna have to put my phone in like I don't know, hide it. So
Yeah, I know that's me with everyone's Italian vacations right now. I'm just
exactly.
off of the Instagram at that
For
moment.
sure.
Well, thank you so much for these insights.
Thank you. This was so fun.
You were a natural, so thank you so much for taking the time for us.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you so much. It was so fun to do this with you.
And now I will turn it over to Michelle so we can get to some audience questions.
So fun. All right. Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks so much, Ashley and Nicole. That was a great discussion. And Ashley is right. Nicole, if this was your first webinar, you are a natural. That was fantastic. And it was so interesting to hear kind of your perspective on brands and trends, etc. And a thanks also to our sponsor, RDI Diamonds. As a reminder, you can still type questions into the Zoom Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we'll try to get as many as possible. I'm going to give everyone a minute to enter their questions, and I just want to say a quick word about RDI Diamonds. RDI Diamonds, the selection you want, the quality you need. Thousands of diamonds? That's just the beginning. RDI offers a wide range of services and support to help you succeed, from flexible memo options, a partnership with De Beers Group Industry Services, to generous stock options and cost-efficient shipping. RDI's goal is to provide the highest quality of both care and diamonds to your store. Visit rdidiamonds.com today to learn more. That is rdidiamonds.com. Now let's get started with our listener questions. Nicole, you talked a little bit about trends. We're talking about color, neon being hot. I really like neon collections myself. Somebody wants to know, is sustainability or origin of materials a hot topic for consumers right now? I think this is a really interesting question because it's certainly a hot topic in the industry, but I'm curious to hear how you think that trickles down to the retail level. Like, are consumers asking about this stuff as much as we think they care?
Totally. This is actually a really amazing question. And the answer is yes. Retailers are asking a lot more, what your sustainability or responsibly sourced practices are. I will tell you, one of my designers, Emily P. Wheeler, is the person to talk to on this because she's actually a member of the RJC. And it is a huge process to, get vetted and everything for this. And Emily has such an amazing commitment to this. All of my designers do, but Emily is the one who really, kind of made me a lot more aware of just all the practices and everything that goes into actually responsibly sourcing everything from start to finish. But yes, it is a hot topic, and I think we're going to see a lot more on this.
So when retailers are asking you to ask your designers, asking your designers to you, that means they're getting asked by their consumers.
For sure. It comes from somewhere, right?
Right.
So yeah, they're getting asked by the consumers. And I think people just in general care a lot more now. I think sustainability was really a buzzword, like, even a year ago. I think it was just something that people it was a hot word. And if you were sustainable, it was great. But now I think people really care. So I think this is kind of the beginning of what we're seeing, is kind of a new, I don't know, can you consider sustainability a trend? I would hope not. I would hope it would just be, as one does. But yes, I do think we're going to be seeing a lot more from this.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And I think everyone listening probably knows, but Nicole mentioned the RJC, and that's the Responsible Jewelry Council. I think everyone probably knows what that means, but just in case. We had another listener who wanted to know, this is a good question as well. When starting a new brand, what are the top 3 things to focus on?
Really good question. I think when you're starting your brand, first figure out who you are. What is it that you're trying to bring into the world? What makes you different from other brands, and what are you trying to create? Also, just having really good assets that go along with it. And I would say making sure that your quality and craftsmanship is really, really great.
Okay.
It's,
All very good things. And we have another question that's along the same lines. Um, Hi, Nicole. Do you have any suggestions for established boutique brands from overseas? How should they start out reaching the US market? And this is actually a question we get a lot. People from other countries, I mean, we're one of, if not the biggest fine jewelry market in the world.
uh,
People always want to know, how do I break into the US?
Yeah, again, I think it's really doing the research, right? Looking at these stores, seeing where your product would fit in. And, also when you're coming from overseas, you kind of have to calculate the costs that go into that, right? So you have to look and you have to see what it costs to import it. And with those added costs, where do you fall on the spectrum with your pricing? um, and just making sure that all of that is in line and that it makes sense for the US market, that you're not competing with things that are made in the US that come in at a lower price point. So I think, again, it's just doing the research and making sure that you understand everything that's involved with selling to the US, and that you can do all these things and get your product to the consumer, to the stores, and that the pricing makes sense for the market.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And someone else wants to know, what is your advice for selling the $20,000 plus pieces online versus the less expensive, the $1,000 price points online? So how are you going to sell something that's $20,000 and up online?
I mean, we're seeing the average spend go up literally every day online. And this is, not just from designers' websites, but it's also with our retail partners. I think a couple of years ago, the average spend was, 2,000 online, and then it went up to 5,000. And now we're seeing pieces, well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars sell online. It's really romancing the product, making sure, again, that you have all the right digital assets, that someone can look at the piece and that it can really sell itself. Make sure that all the information that you have is correct, and all the stone information, the gold information, where things are sourced from. And usually if it's a super high transaction sale, you're going to have some back end things that happen with the consumer or with the store to make sure that it's properly facilitated.
And I think one tip I would add, and Ashley wrote about this a couple years ago when she did online secret shopping, is have the piece worn on somebody so people can see the scale.
Oh, for sure.
People can understand, if this is an earring, how big is it? How big is this ring? Because I think that's one of the pitfalls of buying jewelry online.
Absolutely.
You buy something and you get it and you were like, oh, I thought this ring was going to be a lot bigger.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, Michelle, that's such a good point. And I think now, honestly, it goes without saying that for every product shot you have, you need a model on body shot to go with it. Even if it's something as simple as a $2,000 earring, you need to be able to see the scale of it. And that's not just for your own website, but that also comes in handy when working with your retail partners. It's so much easier to look at a line sheet and see not only a great product image, but also an on body image, to know, it just helps a buyer understand what it is that they're buying.
Yeah. I mean, very important now since, I mean, as we all know, there's less, as we mentioned, we all miss the in-person jewelry handling, right? But that's very helpful then for the retailers to understand
Yeah.
exactly what they're
And
doing.
it also cuts down on a lot of the back and forth, like, which, when you cut down on the back and forth, it also makes orders come in a lot faster. If a buyer can, let's say they see this great horizon hoop from Emily, if they can see it on body and know and understand what size it is, that cuts down on 2 to 3 emails right there. So your orders roll in a lot faster. And obviously you want to translate all of these images also onto your own websites.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. That's all the questions we have for today. So thanks again to our guest, Nicole, for joining us today. And thanks to our editor, Ashley, for hosting.
Mhm.
My next question will return next Thursday. That's going to be July 29th at 1 p.m. Eastern. Associate editor Lenore Fido We'll be interviewing the heads of the major jewelry trade shows coming up in Las Vegas. Saren Bachman from Reed Jewelry Group, that's the company that operates JCK, Gannon Brousseau from Couture, and Doug Hucker from the American Gem Trade Association. A minute ago, I dropped a link into the chat. That's where you can read more information on that session and sign up to attend. Thanks for joining us today, and everyone, please take care.